Prop 8 was a huge win for for vaccine choice and informed consent to even be on the primary ballot back in March. But it was rather vague.
All right. Hello. Welcome to Shot Callers. I'm here with Rebecca Hardy, our president of Texans for Vaccine Choice. And I'm Michelle Evans, political director. We're going to be going over, some of the things that we were able to accomplish at the Republican Party of Texas convention last week and go over some of the successes from last night's primary runoff. So I'm going to let Rebecca kick us off with some RPT nuggets.
All right. So the highlights from the Republican Party of Texas State Convention. It was a great week. It's always so much work, right? And the prep work begins essentially in December for this big convention because there's kind of two things simultaneously happening from a mission standpoint at the RPT State Convention. We have the delegates we worked very hard all spring to recruit people that would be dedicated vaccine choice delegates to promote our issue in their various caucuses. And so, the work of the delegation is just nonstop for the convention. But then we also have the exhibit hall experience. Texans for Vaccine Choice has always had a booth at the convention. And so we had kind of two very different, but equally as important things going on from a mission standpoint last week. And so Michelle and I got there on Sunday night so that we'd be ready to go, or maybe it was Sunday afternoon. So we'd be ready to go when the pre-convention committees kicked off Monday morning. And what was interesting is that, every Senate district puts one person on each of those various committees. And the committees that we as a movement are most concerned about is the Platform Committee and the Legislative Priorities Committee. And what was great is this time around, Michelle was the designated representative from her Senate district for the Platform Committee. So she kind of got a little bit of a much more insider view. The hours that this woman put into the platform, that just deserves a standing ovation. So, Michelle, why don't you give us a little bit of high-level insights on your experience there in the Platform Committee?
Yeah, so what a lot of people don't know is that the week prior to convention, everybody that was on Platform Committee was divided into two subcommittees each, and we got to designate our top two that we wanted to be on, and my two were Health and Human Services and State Affairs, and I got both. And so the week prior to convention, each subcommittee met on Zoom for 2 hours in the evening, Monday through Friday. So that alone was 20 hours of work. And then once we started getting into committees at the convention on Monday at 11, it was 8 to 14-hour days, going over testimony, I don't want to say nitpicking, but nitpicking particular words in the platform to see if there was a better way to say things, going over bills that had recently been passed to make sure that anything that has been addressed legislatively is removed from the platform so that we can make it more concise and focused. We did go over what used to be plank 137, which was the medical freedom plank. We went over that ad nauseum, back and forth, adding things, taking things off, putting things from our resolution, language from our resolution into the planks to make it a little bit more, a little less verbose. And what was funny is that you had people on each subcommittee. Some people want all the words, and some people, like me, hate all the words and want to make it a little bit shorter. Ultimately, I didn't prevail, but I tried. So,
You
and
know,
then
and I'm
once we
gonna,
started,
can I interrupt here and say, you know,
yeah,
we even did a live from the booth about this quandary, and it was so funny because I love all the words. I love words, but you have, I tried to channel my inner Michelle Evans often to be more concise, less wordy. See, I just said concise and less wordy. I love all the words. I get it. So
I
it
loved
was,
it.
it's kind of funny that we were here trying to advocate for fewer words, but there's strength in that brevity. There really was. But the bottom line is this was not a hill for us to die on. It's the wording is very strong in that it's the longest plank in the entire platform. So it was a strange, first world problem to have, and not one that we were necessarily ready to, launch full on war on. I mean, the more wordy, that was again a tough, silly problem to have. So continue.
Yeah. So while I had my butt planted in a seat for committee hearings, Rebecca was running around like a chicken with her head cut off on some days, and not so much on other days, but trying to figure out where to be, how to testify, where to testify, how many minutes, trying to make sure that we have all of our points and that the points that we had prepared together were still relevant to the platform as it was on that particular day and time, because it was constantly in flux. So luckily, Rebecca was able to make the long trek between Legislative Priorities Committee and Health and Human Services Subcommittee so that she could testify before both. Like I said, was indoors for 8+ hours a day, barely ever getting to see the sun. And so I don't really know what happened outside of those doors. But we did, I think, really good work on the platform committee as a whole, because after the subcommittees met, took testimony, and made some decisions, we brought it all up to the platform committee as a whole, where we were able to take testimony again twice, I believe, before we had a full report to send to the floor. So what was funny is Friday, they were passing out printed copies of the platform, and multiple times people were like, "Do you want a copy?" And I was like, no, I do not. I have seen this thing front, back, sideways. I don't want to read these things again for the time being. I feel like I can memorize it. But so I would love to know what was happening outside of those doors, because I was not privy to any of the goings on outside of my subcommittees in the room that we were in.
Well, on Monday, like you said, I testified in the HHS subcommittee with you and some other just great patriots. And then I also, you and I were both you were actually able to be excused for just a handful of minutes to go testify in the Legislative Priorities Committee of the whole as well.
I've totally forgotten about that.
You did. You were there. So both of us were able to testify in Legislative Priorities on Monday. And then on Tuesday, your other subcommittee met. And so there wasn't anything that I could do on that day as far as subcommittee. So just was there to network and to kind of monitor the committees. And then and God bless you. I mean, I just don't think that people really understand how many hours it took. I mean, there were days where I got back to the Airbnb at 10 and you're like, I hope to get home by midnight type of thing. And so, just all the kudos for you. But on Wednesday, that's when our team of volunteers arrived and we set up the booth while you were still stuck up on the third floor in committee. A whole flurry of activity was happening in the exhibit hall. And we were able to finally get registered and get our credentials and get our beautiful booth up, just set up. And it was, it's so funny because I'd seen so many things just on my computer screen, little proofs and stuff. And we had been tweaking, make this bigger, make this smaller, all that for weeks, if not months. And to see it all in my hot little hands, all set up. It was so much fun to see it all come together. I know we giggle about my little moniker of Booth Becca, but Booth Becca, I mean, it was so pleased. I just loved everything about our booth, and our entire theme was that "Come and Make Me" theme. And it was just so Texas. It was so tough, and it's so just unapologetic. Like, you're either with us or you're not on the issues of vaccine choice. And so that was really good. The other thing that we got word of late Wednesday night was that while the standalone vaccine choice priority language that we had been pushing for earlier in the week didn't get adopted as a standalone priority, what we got word of was that some vaccine choice language was added to this. It was originally called Let Texas Run Texas priority, and then the name of that priority shifted to End Federal Overreach. And so that priority got some vaccine choice language added onto it. So we were happy about that. And then we saw what the language was, and we ended up having to go back Thursday night to testify, to ask for an amendment, because the language was, it was almost like a copy and paste of that Prop 8 language, which, again, Prop 8 was a huge win for for vaccine choice and informed consent to even be on the primary ballot back in March. But it was rather vague. And we hear all the time from people when I'm out in the community saying, well, what exactly is informed consent? Help me out, explain what this is. So we went in and asked for an amended language that would call for the end of vaccine status-based discrimination and the end of all vaccine and medical mandates. And that the Committee of the Whole Thursday night adopted that language as well into that in federal overreach priority. So that was great.
I think you're glossing over something that, as far as the booth is concerned, that is rather, for me, was really striking, because we have kind of our brand, red, white, and blue. And we went a whole new direction. We had a very new look to our booth, very different than what it's been like in the past. Rebecca and I struggle with her liking all the words and me not. And she also has, she loves all the things in the booth as well, and I don't. So we worked really hard to make sure that the flow of the booth worked, that you could walk through it easily, that it wasn't, you weren't confined into a specific space, that everything had a purpose. And I think we did a really good job of having a lot of information and swag out there and merchandise, but it felt very open. It felt very welcoming, and like we had very specific areas for everything. And we had like a double space, right?
Yep.
We got 2 booth spaces, and I still felt like we could have used more room, but
it's true.
I loved having the little photo booth there. I thought that was really great, but everything was very stark black and white and red. And so I thought that was a really cool departure from our typical branding. And I think it really caught a lot of attention.
You couldn't miss us.
Off to you.
Well, it was a team effort for sure, and I could not have been more pleased with how it turned out. And if you haven't seen the pictures, please go look on our social media. We had a really cool neon light in there that said "Texans Call the Shots." That was part of our photo booth, kind of our step and repeat photo op. And I can't wait to get all of my pictures uploaded and onto socials, and so that you can see all the people that came by. And on Thursday afternoon, we invited all of our legislators to come. And, as it turns out, about half of them were not able to come, because that's just the way that convention rolls, is that you intend to do something and then you're just pulled a million different ways. I mean, heck, you and I barely made it to our own video. Yes. So that was really fun to have them in the booth as well. And a few people that didn't quite make it into the video stopped by afterwards to film separate videos as well. So that was really cool as well. But I will tell you, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, as far as platform is concerned, the TLDR, like the down low of all of it is that our plank looks great. Our priority looks great. We won't know for several days whether or not, they voted top 15 legislative priorities. They did it a little bit differently this year in that they had sub priorities under one heading. but we won't know for several days if our priority made it to the top 8, which is what we will be, what Republicans will be pushing for in the 89th session is like, make sure you get at least these top 8 legislative priorities passed. There were a lot of good options, but who knows what people ultimately decided. The platform passed, so we have what we have. It was a little bit shorter than 2022, not a lot shorter, but a little bit shorter. I don't think we reached our goal of cutting 10%, but we did our best. But talking about well, I don't want to skip out on some of the major stuff that happened between Friday and Saturday when the convention adjourned. There was business outside of the platform and outside of priorities, which was kind of big. And that is that we elected a new party chair, party vice chair, and representatives from Texas who will stump for us at the Republican National Committee for RNC Committee Man and Committee Woman.
Yep, there you go. Committee woman, our committee man. I'm glad nobody was foolish enough to challenge Dr. Robin Armstrong for RNC committee man. The RNC committee woman was an open election, an open race. And we had a lot of business. And the other interesting little wrinkle to all of that is on top of you serving on platform, well, let's just remind everybody, this was your first time as a delegate, even. You were there 2 years ago, but you were there as a candidate because you had just won your state rep primary. Right. This was your first time to be there as a delegate. And not only were you chosen to sit on platform, but you and I were both also chosen to chair our CD caucuses. So just to remind everyone, in the midterms, you only meet with your senatorial district at the convention. On presidential years, you have federal business to do as well. And so your congressional district meets on top of that. So it made for a very tight schedule. But Michelle and I both had our moment with our gavels there in our CD caucuses. I had one person quote me on Facebook that said, my favorite part of the CD caucus was when Rebecca Hardy said, I have a gavel and I'm not afraid to use it. So I had to use it a few times because in between votes, people would get super chatty and no amount of like, please take your seats was going to cut it. So I had to bang the gavel a few times, but it was all in good fun.
Yeah. It was not, it really wasn't a difficult task. You literally have a script that you have to read from, and you cannot go off script. You can't change the rules. You can't change the agenda. So it's, a trained monkey could do the CD caucus chair. But I was really happy to do it. I got to meet some good people and got some good feedback. And then once we hit the floor on Saturday for general session, where we were voting on the platform and the legislative priorities, you and I each had our, caucuses to wrangle and hand out the scantrons and do all of that kind of stuff. So it was time consuming, but it wasn't a difficult task, to be honest. But I would do it again.
I was just, who was I talking to earlier? I can't remember, but I was talking to somebody today that said, I'd totally do it again. It was, the rough thing was Saturday morning. We had to convene at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning, and that was after what we kind of glossed over was the fact that the delegation voted to come back after dinner Friday night to continue debating things. And so we all had to reconvene Friday night in the convention hall from essentially 9 p.m. to nearly midnight. And then after we were released, there was only, 5,000 people waiting for Ubers and such outside the convention center.
There were 2 galas Friday night. There was the Texas Federation of Republican Women Gala, and there was the RPT Gala. I think it was called the Patriots Gala with Congressman Matt Gaetz. It was luckily at the hotel next door to the convention center, but there were plenty of people who were returning to the floor after being at galas. And so they're in their evening gowns and their suits. And Rebecca, at one point, God bless her, she actually fell asleep on the chairs because it was just going too long and I wasn't ready to leave. And then we pranked her, and I'm sorry for that. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so
You know what,
we,
guys? Y'all need to weigh in on this, on if I ever forgive Michelle Evans for this. I mean, full confession, I was really
wasn't my
tired.
idea.
I don't sleep well when I travel, and it's okay. I'm kind of a functional insomniac, if that's a thing. And so something hit me where I was like, I feel like I could close my eyes right now. And so live in this world of like, I got to sleep when I can, and if when it hits I can, because it hardly ever happens. And so I'd kind of started dozing off when Michelle Evans, it's probably what, 11 p.m. at night, comes and bangs on the chair next to me and says, Rebecca, they're messing with our plink. No, they were not. But I was
shot up like a cannon. Shot up like a cannon, wide-eyed, just what? And then everybody around us was laughing at her. So it wasn't my idea, but it was my execution. So I'll take credit or blame or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, so we.
I'm still working through forgiveness on that. Just FYI. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. All in good fun.
So yeah, so all in all, RPT was exhausting. It was fun. It was successful. We're going to do it again in 2 years. It was well worth it because we want to make sure that vaccine choice truly does not leave anybody's memory, that just because we've ended COVID vaccine mandates, that is not the end of the story. We have a lot more work to do. And that's usually, that kind of doesn't hit people really, that there are still outstanding problems, transplant patients, college students, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of dovetails nicely into, going into the 89th legislature. We essentially in Texas, because of the way that districts are drawn, whoever wins the primary typically will also win the general. And there was some leftover business to do in the primaries. We had more than 9 runoffs for House and Senate. And we recommended 9 or 10 candidates, and seven won. And this is such a big deal because of those 7, 6 were challengers to longtime incumbents. One incumbent has been there for 14 years, and I think he took over his dad's seat. So that seat has had Kimple on it for many, many, many years. We were delighted. We were last night, if you've ever watched election results on the Secretary of State's website, it refreshes every 5 minutes automatically. And so Rebecca and I were texting each other that we were living in 5-minute increments. So we're waiting for new numbers to come.
And in some ways, it was more stressful, runoff night than it was election night. Yeah.
Way more stressful. But we are so proud to say that we have 7 more really strong vaccine choice champions headed to the legislature in January.
Yes.
And our work does not end now. Now that convention is over and now that the runoffs are done, we will now pivot to getting legislation drafted, because if you're not first, you're last. We want to get bills hitting the House and the Senate early. We want low numbered bills because they tend to be a little bit more successful. We'll also be keeping a close eye on what is voted as a Republican Party of Texas legislative priority in the top 8. And then working, as we did in 2023, on getting the governor and lieutenant governor to focus on our area as priority issues. So still a lot of work to be done, as always.
Yeah, always. Do you want to review some of the winners, Michelle?
Yes. So I'm excited to say that Andy Hopper in House District 64, this is his 3rd time running. Is that correct?
I think so.
And he made it to a runoff in 2023 2022. And this year it was a resounding victory, besting incumbent Lynn Stuckey. Andy has been with us since the get-go and is a very strong, convicted guy that promises to carry the mantle of our issue into the 89th legislative session next year. And for you in your area, you had a very
Over here in Tarrant County, which where I live, the all eyes were watching the Stephanie Click David Lowe rematch as well. This is David Lowe sent Stephanie Click into a runoff again 2 years ago, and came up a little short in the runoff. And this time around, he prevailed as well with a pretty resounding victory. It wasn't even really close. The last time was it 12, 13 points spread there. Mm-hmm. And so, and I just want to remind our listeners that as chair of public health in the House, Rep. Click was able to kill a lot of really good legislation that the Senate sent over. The Senate did their jobs. They sent well over a dozen pieces of protective legislation over where they went to die in the House, mostly at the hands of the Public Health Committee chair.
Outside of those two races, there was an open seat in the Victoria area. AJ Louderback was our recommended candidate, and he won. We had Carissa Richardson, who ousted disgraced Representative Frederick Frazier in Collin County. I was really excited to see Katrina Pearson, who rose to fame in the Trump administration and ran against Justin Holland. She won big last night, so that was huge.
And if you recall, Holland came out real publicly on Twitter several months ago, basically saying, like, just trashing the grassroots, trashing the party, saying, we don't need them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to be clear, like, none of these incumbents were particularly terrible on our issue. It's just that we are living in a time where it's not enough to just fly under the radar. It's not enough to be mediocre. You need to be strong on our issue or risk losing your position. There was, I'm missing some. I know I'm missing some.
Well, Schoolcraft and Helen Kerwin are the other two, I think.
Right. And these are, 7, 9-year, 11-year, 14-year incumbents. A ton of money was spent to protect those seats, and it was ultimately wasted. In many of these races, the incumbents were spending upwards of $200 or $300 per vote. And the grassroots candidates, the challengers, were spending far less, but had so much momentum because we have entered a new era in Texas politics where, like I said, it's not enough to be mediocre and fly under the radar. You need to be strong.
The grassroots are paying attention, and they're going to hold you to account now, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
So it's going to be a new day in January 2025, and I am so excited to see what we can get done. We passed 5 bills in 2023, so we need to at least pass 6, or I'm going to consider myself a failure.
Well, I don't know about that, but we always do have high standards around here. We always execute with excellence, and I think that played out at our week in RPT and also Tuesday night at the runoff. And so we are incredibly proud of our work. I will tell you, I think I speak on behalf of our entire team where we want to maybe crawl into a little hole for a few days to rest and recoup. But here we are recording a video because our work never stops and it continues on, and we wouldn't have it any other way. And we're proud to represent this issue in every aspect of our society. And any final words, Michelle?
No, I'm just, as somebody who had never been a delegate before, to have the opportunity to see truly how the sausage is made, to form a party in the future of a party, it was really an honor to serve in that way. And I'm looking forward to doing it again in 2026. And I'm so grateful for everyone who attended RPT, either as a guest or a delegate, who stopped by to say hi, who stopped me in the hallways, who was just so supportive of our efforts to continue protecting vaccine choice and informed consent. So thank you.
Amen. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, continue to follow us on all of our social media and make sure you're subscribed to our emails, because that's where we really do try to get a lot of information out. So thanks again, and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.